the best coaches in the game. We really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmet's casket is got. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got.
All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Bold Call Fantasy Football Podcast presented by DFSARMY, of course, as always. And today we are sponsored by Underdog Fantasy as well. We're going to talk about all of that. Welcome, my co-host, Season Long Says. What's up, my man?
You know what? I was checking. I'm good. I was checking around and just seeing like what kind of fantasy football people are talking about. And there is a group of fantasy, because people said, "What the hell are you guys going to talk about on a fantasy football podcast now?" And to me, that was a strange comment, because I just want to talk about this stuff 24/7, man. I love getting into the best ball drafts. I love talking about player analysis. And I saw a funny meme up online. I mean, you saw the Super Bowl weekend, right? When that point of view camera, when he was like looking through the hallways and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Someone said, "Me looking to talk about fantasy football," and it was him like squirreling through the hallways looking for people to talk to about fantasy football. I love that meme.
A bunch of great, actually, my favorite one with that one was somebody posted me looking for my wife at Nordstrom.
Yeah, there you go.
Walking around like, oh,
even
where
better.
Are you? Really great stuff. So we are 1 week or a few days past an amazing, I don't want to say amazing Super Bowl, but a really surprising Super Bowl game that
I love the Super Bowl. I thought it was amazing.
I just love the historic nature of it, and of course Tom Brady sealing his place in the special GOAT room reserved for the very, very, very precious few. You know, you and I talked about it. He's in that room with Muhammad Ali. He's
Michael
in a
Jordan.
Room, with Michael Jordan. You know, Wayne Gretzky's in there. He's like, "Hey, what are you talking about?" I don't know if Gretzky's Canadian.
I would say he is Canadian. How many Stanley Cups did Gretzky win? Is he considered the GOAT of all time?
Yes. His numbers are so much better than everyone else that you know, he's one of those players whose numbers, like when you look at, I don't know hockey well enough to know the exacts, but like it's like when you look at like assists or some of these important numbers like goals, like he just blows everybody away. He's one of those players that blows everybody out of the water.
The last time I was like super into hockey was, you know, in the 80s when the Islanders were winning cups, like Mike Bossy and Billy Smith, and you know that's how long I've been out of hockey.
I was gonna say, for me it was 1994 when the Rangers had Messier and that whole group. You know, and then I kind of just I think hockey's a great sport. I just don't watch it, but.
One second. Although I did I got back into hockey. Remember, like when we were in college, like '94, like NHL '94 on Sega.
Oh, I like that. Yeah,
yeah. Like when the first time, like you could punch the guy and there'd be like blood on the ice. Remember that? That was like a giant leap in video gaming. Think about like I was thinking about this also. Like, and this is a fantasy football. I'm going to tie it back in. Is that amazing leaps in technology that really that I was trying to think about fantasy football. So for example, like, do you remember when you first saw like a Nintendo NES? That was such a major leap in technology from, say, like the Atari or like the video gaming systems then. For you, for fantasy football, what do you think that leap was, where it went from
this is
like
very clear.
1 second, where the technology leap or the advance was so great that it just like blew your mind? What was that for you?
Well, I mean, it goes back to when fantasy football really became popularized. So fantasy football went from being something that kind of like nerds with, you know, a newspaper and, you know, and a stat sheet would score by hand.
USA Today.
It was about 2002 or 2003 that Yahoo released their fantasy football product. And that was, to me, the game changer. It took a couple seasons for then. Once that happened, within about 2 years, fantasy football's popularity was exploding. So about by 2005, you know why they call it roto? You know why the rotisserie league football? Do you know the story of rotisserie league?
I think I heard it one time, but I'll let you reveal it, and I'm curious if I'm right. I don't want to spoil it just in case I do hit it. What is it?
people get this wrong all the time. Roto, everything's called a roto. Roto this, roto that, right? And so you're like, rotisserie, it must mean, it sounds like a word that must have like some numerical connotation, like, I don't really know the definition. No. There's no special. The rotisserie, it's called rotisserie league because the first people who supposedly started playing rotisserie football would meet at a rotisserie chicken place.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was going to say something.
It was like literally, it was just the restaurant that they would meet in was first of all, what kind of what a Boston Market? Where the fuck were they? But they were in a rotisserie chicken place.
So you hit on something interesting though before. You talked about how Yahoo putting everything online was a big step forward, and that is. But for me, and I that definitely is right. But there was another step that Yahoo did that really I think changed the game of fantasy football, or was live scoring. Because you remember in the beginning, Yahoo, you'd have to pay a premium to get live scoring. If not, everything would score like after the game. That was their upsell, Yahoo. But when live scoring became free, and you can watch your fantasy football, like the minute LaDainian Tomlinson gained 5 yards, your score went up 0.5. I think that was like oh my God, I can't stop checking my app. I mean, that hooked me in. So for me, that was the big technology, like the live scoring.
It's funny that you mentioned that. And I can't remember the name, and I feel bad. But I was at, I go to the fantasy football conventions every year, the business convention from the, now it's called the sports gaming and fantasy, convention. But before it was a fantasy football convention. And one of the guys that was honored, they were telling the story of how him and another developer were the first to bring in develop live scoring. For I think it was for CBS. I believe that CBS originated it, and they did charge money.
But right, the free live scoring is what got everybody in. And
yes, but the guys who created it for CBS, it didn't exist before that. It was like they sort of coded this, and they were the first ones, and it was a big honoring of a person like that. So really interesting that you brought it around to that.
And think about this.
I can't remember who it was.
And that really set the pathway to DFS. I mean, the whole idea of behind DraftKings and FanDuel in that game is to keep you engaged with your phone in your hand and your TV screen right here, or however you watch the game, and marry those two and keep you hooked for the entire day. Because if FanDuel or DraftKings just scored at the end of the day, you might go out for a walk. I mean, we all love football, but sometimes we need a break. You might put that down. But the live scoring, I think, really was that jump from like Atari to NES.
Live scoring huge, and again, it was the biggest jump being going online and not having to hand score, and then of course making it more exciting. And at the time, it was the only real way to sort of gamble, with your friends. And for me, the reason I got into fantasy football was because I love football. As a Jets fan, I was a fan of a generally poor team, but I would look forward to that Sunday game so much. I couldn't sleep on Saturday nights. Like, I love the game so much, and when I got into fantasy football, I could get that joy out of every game. And that's what DFS has brought me. It brought me like the fan level of excitement to watch just about every sporting event, which is a beautiful thing, because I used to get it like once on a Sunday, and usually with the Jets. By week 4, the excitement was a little bit gone. The season was over. Vinny Testaverde, took his Achilles out, or Chad Pennington tore his rotator cuff, or, you realize that Mark Sanchez is your quarterback, and that's not a good thing. Whoever it was a disaster after week 4. So it was always really nice. Now, hold up. We talked a lot about fun stuff, but let me get back to the point of this podcast. We are talking ADP values in early best ball leagues, and we are talking it based on the Underdog Fantasy platform. So let me talk a minute about our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Now, Underdog Fantasy is a full, kind of DFS fantasy that focuses on snake drafts and pick'em games. We love it. We love playing there. And one of the things they're running right now are their big board early fantasy leagues. Now, early best ball leagues. Now, you might say, I don't want to draft an early team now. What about the draft? And I don't know a lot of information. This contest ends before the draft, so you're good to go. As far as
it ends before the real NFL draft.
Before the real NFL draft. So everybody's in the same boat. It's a 50K. It's a 50K contest. They're running. It's early best ball leagues, and what we're trying to do is find an edge in these contests by looking for ADP values, players that you should be taking late that Sez and I have been really spot on. This is like a specialty of picking players who do not belong as late as they're going in these drafts. And our record shows that a lot of times these guys we're talking about now, by the time June and July roll around, the ADP settles in the correct place. So if you can get on them early, you can get an advantage. One cool thing specifically today, and today is Wednesday? What is today? Wednesday, February
10th.
Yeah, today's Wednesday, February 10th. Specifically today, when you do one of these best ball leagues, one of the big board contests on Underdog Fantasy, they're giving a free entry into their pick'em game. Their pick'em game is really awesome too. I was just playing it. I was just checking it out, and basically, it's you could pick anywhere from 2 to 6 props, and you get a multiplier on your entry fee, anywhere from 3x to 20x, depending on how many. The props are actually pretty easy. They're NBA focused. They're pretty easy. You could just use the DFSARMY projection models, and you can get a pretty good idea of which of these players should outperform or underperform the number that they're given on the app. So
and use code DFSARMY when you deposit, and they're going to give you a $100 love it guarantee back. So if you don't love their product, up to $100, they'll in good faith refund your money when you use code DFSARMY. Also helps us out, lets them know that we're sending you over there, and we can continue to bring you more of this great content in front of, and not behind the paywall, but in front of the paywall for free.
There we go. Now, let's talk Best Ball 2021 early draft ADP steals.
Okay.
Love steals. I'm a value-based drafter. You know me.
Yes. So I set up a little game for you here today, and it's I would say more of an exercise for us to go through. So I've done a few of these Underdog Fantasy Best Ball drafts already, and it's, by the time August rolls around, even into May, I basically have my draft plan. I know exactly how many players, how many shares of this guy and how many shares of that player that I want. But early on, I have these draft dilemmas, and I want you to help me walk through them and solve them. Okay, so I'm going to we're going to start with the running back position. I'm going to give you a few dilemmas in the important rounds, and then I'm going to give you what I think are a couple steals. And if you have a couple steals in each position, I want you to let me know as well.
I want the steals.
Well, this is a good lead into that. So in the first round, let's say you're picking pick 3 to pick 6, and you know that I want to draft a running back in the first round. Now, the two players that seem to flip-flop in every draft I've done so far are second-year player Jonathan Taylor on the Colts. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be yet. We do know Nyheim Hines is still going to be there doing the pass catching. And then we have Saquon Barkley, who now is 2 years in a row of a season-ending injury. Those two players, I'm not sure who I want yet. I don't know if I want Saquon Barkley. I don't know if I want Jonathan Taylor. I want you to slowly walk me through, and everyone here, when they're in their best ball league, how should they play this dilemma when they want a running back in the middle of the round?
I think for me, it's actually a pretty easy answer. Saquon Barkley has proven to be a little bit overrated in terms of his production, even when healthy. And he is on a losing team, which is a big, big problem for me at the running back position. So when I compare him to Jonathan Taylor, young, fresh, winning team, I think the negatives that people perceive about Jonathan Taylor are also incorrect. The Colts want to run the football. The Colts will throw to Jonathan Taylor. Nyheim Hines is there. I understand it. But they showed this season that they will throw to Jonathan Taylor, that he is really going to be used, even with Nyheim Hines in the game, as a bell cow. We saw him get 20-plus touches. Those are more touches than Saquon Barkley tended to get, even when healthy. Barkley, of course, the injury history is too fucking scary. It is. I can't. But the worst part is Barkley is on a losing team. We don't know that the Giants will be any better this year than they were last. I expect they'll improve a little bit because it's hard to be worse. But they were in the weakest division in the NFL and still really, had a tough time. That offense is still a massive question mark. I think they might be better. I think if they bring in a wide receiver, it will help. But across the board, give me Jonathan Taylor. Give me a running back on a winning team, young, fresh, no injury history. They throw to him. Everything to me says Jonathan Taylor is the pick there. And let the draftniks who are still enamored by, Saquon Barkley's college career take him ahead of it. He just hasn't shown it in the NFL, even when healthy.
Well, I mean, Saquon Barkley did have that amazing rookie year.
He had some good games in his rookie year. Let's bring it back. It wasn't consistent. It wasn't consistently great, and he's on a losing team. He wasn't consistent. He had a few good games. It reminds me of, I think he's a great player, but he did not. The Giants are not a team that runs the football well.
So, and then just to bring that back around, where would you slot Alvin Kamara against this bunch? I mean, do you have Jonathan Taylor? It sounds like above them both. So you're taking Taylor at 3 or 4. But now, what would you do with the Alvin Kamara? And when we don't even know who the quarterback? Well, let's say the quarterback's going to be Taysom Hill versus Barkley. There. I mean, we won't spend too much time on this one, but just snap call. Who do you like better?
Man, it's tough to not say Alvin Kamara there.
Yeah, he did have a lot of, the 6 touchdowns, could have had 7 to end the season, the regular season, right?
It's hard to not say, but we don't know for sure that it's going to be Taysom. I will say that Kamara did not look that great with Taysom Hill under the helm. He just didn't.
Yeah. You got to figure Sean Payton will correct that, make sure that and then he's got to know that Alvin.
I don't know that for sure.
Right. I mean, I have enough faith in him as a coach, being one of the top 3 or 4 coaches in the NFL, that he'll get that corrected. All right, let's move on. The next dilemma that you're going to face is on the 2-3 turn. Now, again, we're focused a lot on the top 30 picks right now because people want to, their first best ball of the season. When they go into Underdog Fantasy and they're playing for the first time, they're going to revert back to what they knew. They're going to revert back to that recency bias that you often talk about, Geek. So the next set of players in a PPR league that you're going to, and Underdog is half PPR, so we'll, it's right there in the middle. But Zeke Elliott and Austin Eckler. That team, those 2 guys are going to, their ADPs, people are confused on how to play it, who they should pick first. Walk me through slowly when you're in a draft, the case for each, or if you have a definite take, which one should go first.
I mean, again, given the choice of those 2 players, what we know is this. Listen, Austin Eckler had some injury issues this year. Zeke Elliott had some team injury issues, not personal injury issues, but
offensive line too, right?
Offensive line, and more so, he lost the quarterback. So now I'm comparing the very exciting, sexy, high fantasy point producing Dallas offense under a Dak Prescott regime. Love all of that. My issue with Zeke Elliott is his volume continues to tick downward. His backup running back looks fantastic on that team. And it does not look like Zeke Elliott is going to be, going forward, an 80% of the carries guy. So that makes him much more human.
Wait, stop there. What kind of workload percentage split do you? And I'm assuming you're talking about Tony Pollard.
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to be more of like a 70-30 or closer to like a 65-35?
I think we're looking at 70-30 is your best case scenario at this point for Zeke Elliott.
And if you're going to go with that split. Well, also, I want to know how the most important part, the receptions, are going to be split up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the concern. The problem with the Cowboys a little bit is, are they playing from ahead or are they playing from behind? This is why the quarterback situation is so important. If they're playing from ahead, I think Zeke will be in the game. If they're winning games, Zeke is going to be in there. If they start to have another year like this where they're sort of behind and just getting smashed in these games, you're going to see a lot more of Pollard. So I like Zeke there. I probably will pull the trigger on Zeke over Eckler. I probably would personally. It's hard not to because of the goal line role. Eckler will not be a bell cow either. He's a little bit more explosive, and I'm excited for the potential of that team, especially having gotten rid of that coach, the conservative coach.
So and that's the other thing. They got rid of Anthony Lynn, who's now over in Detroit, I believe, right? He's in Detroit as a.
I don't know what.
Yeah, I think
he
was hired as the offensive coordinator in Detroit, which I think, by the way, is good for DeAndre Swift. But you have Justin Herbert there, so I think that's good for Eckler. And we already know Eckler is not just someone who runs little swing routes. He actually runs real passing routes. We don't know how the new coach is going to deploy him yet, but Austin Eckler is shaping up to be one of the best running back picks in the second round. You and I originally were getting aggressive on him, and I think we still can, but he'll be left for you in the second round. No reason to jump the gun on him in early best ball. All right, Geek. Here we go. Next one. I want to go back to the class of 2019, I believe. And there was 3 running backs that were at the top of every rookie board, and they've all had highs and lows. And so let's talk about Miles Sanders versus Josh Jacobs versus David Montgomery. I mean, all 3 of these guys spent time over the last 2 seasons as the definite one. I mean, Josh Jacobs, when they first were drafted, he's the guy. He was going 1-1 in all rookie drafts. Last year, it was Miles Sanders, right? It was Miles Sanders that everyone was taking in the first round. And Josh Jacobs was more of that value pick in the second round. Enter 2021. David Montgomery finishes the RB1, not top 5 RB, the RB1 over the last 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of these players has had their moment. Let's square it away. Let's rank them, because when you're in the second round, when you're in the third round, you're going to be faced with this dilemma, and you're going to want your second running back. Geek, who should they take?
Well, before you can even analyze that, we have to talk about the changes on these teams, because all 3 of these teams are transforming in front of our eyes. Let's start
with let's walk them through. Let's start with Josh Jacobs, okay? I'll just kind of lay it out for you, and then
except for this team, by the way, maybe transformation.
Well, that's why I'm starting with him, because this is the simplest case. All right, so Josh Jacobs on the Raiders, he's a locked-in running back 1. There's no real other running back there to really challenge him. But what we've seen over the first 2 seasons is he's not gonna be a 50 reception player. Derek Carr, let's assume he's there. I know there's some rumors right now that he might not be there, but if he's not there, that means they've upgraded potentially, right? They're not gonna downgrade it.
It means that Mariota took over, which is better.
Right. Well, it's what I'm saying. So at very minimum, let's operate under the assumption that it's Carr. Okay.
I think the story with Jacobs is very simple. Believe what your eyes are showing you. There's no reason to think that next season will be any different for him than this season was. Jacobs is who he is. We saw who he is, and he's not that good. He's not that good. So he, for me, is the worst of the 3 of the trio that you just mentioned. He does not get passing game work at all, and for whatever reason, that team doesn't run the football incredibly efficiently. They're not really a winning team, or they haven't been a particularly winning team, but when they're doing it, they're not doing it via the run as much as you'd expect. So he's a yardage and touchdowns back, and you have to, for me, he's the lowest on the tier of these 3 guys.
Okay, so Jacobs is the third right. So you're going to get Josh Jacobs in the middle of the third round. Wow. Things done changed, right?
Not that excited about it either. All right. And you're not excited to pull the trigger.
Well, let me ask you this. Right. Let me ask you. All right. So, all right. No, I want to stick with the topic. All right. So you have David Montgomery. We don't know who the quarterback.
The changes on these other 2 teams.
So I'm saying this is what we're left with. I'm just going to set it up for you. We got David Montgomery, who finishes the RB1. We have Tarik Cohen is presumably coming back healthy. I know he's been rumored to be in some trades, but let's assume he's there. He's there. Okay. We don't know what the quarterback situation is. I think it's most likely to be a veteran bridge with a rookie behind him. So someone like Cam Newton, someone like Andy Dalton, someone like well, it won't be Mitch Trubisky. We know that, but I would say a mid-level. Well, actually, Cam Newton really does change things. But let's just talk about
makes it so much worse.
Yes. So I mean, who do you?
I don't think it's going to be Cam. By the way, my prediction is Cam Newton will not get a job this year.
He'll just be a backup, a circuit backup.
I don't even think it might be one of those times where he won't take a backup position and he'll be like a free agent going into training camp, waiting for a call. And outside of an injury, he might not play this year. That's what I think might happen.
I think, and I don't want to diverge too much off our.
He might be too prideful to be a backup, is what I'm saying. He might not accept it.
But Cam, and again, I don't want to diverge too much off our topic here, but I could see him signing somewhere like Denver, thinking he could beat out Drew Lock. But here, let's stick to it. So, talk to me about David Montgomery. Let's go through him, because right now you've ranked Jacobs third of the 3 that we're talking about: Sanders, Jacobs, Montgomery.
Yeah.
Talk about Montgomery now versus Sanders.
It's tough because, again, we have massive changes in these 2 teams. I do not trust. This is one of my problems. I don't trust the Bears to do something positive at the quarterback position, I think they're going to screw it up. So that's my general concern. I think they're probably going to screw it up. With that being said, for me, these two guys are super close. You've got the Eagles, where I think it's a foregone conclusion that Wentz will be gone. It's not 100%, but I think I'm leaning towards. I'm definitely favoring Wentz not being there, which brings us to Jalen Hurts regime. We don't know how the running back and Hurts will operate, but I think it's better. So I'm going to go. I still like Montgomery a little bit more. Montgomery just had more volume, but
you like Montgomery. You like Montgomery over Sanders.
I'm going to go Montgomery first because we've seen him do it. We've seen him do it over a prolonged period, multiple games, and the Bears know that this guy can handle the workload. With Miles Sanders, it's a lot of injuries when the volume tends to go up. We really have not seen this kid kind of be able to carry the football 25 times in a game. It's just not happened. So I'm not saying he can't. I'm saying we haven't seen it, where I've seen Montgomery get 30 touches in a game and handle it, and the body is fine. He's able to handle the punishment. So just for that reason alone, because they project so similar, give me the more durable guy who's shown that he can carry the football 30 plus times in a game and not, get tired. I'll do that. And plus he's the hybrid, Saquon Barkley legs, Derrick Henry body, brain of, don't you remember he used to call himself the hybrid and compared himself to like every great player, I got the legs of this guy. And so maybe it's true.
So you're going to be very pleased to know that he's going behind these other two. So David Montgomery actually has an ADP less rich than those other players. So Sanders and Jacobs both going before Montgomery. So you're identifying him as our first
prediction. What did I say at the beginning of the show? That you're going to get early draft ball bargains, that best ball bargains that by the time we come to June and July are going to flip. So I will predict that by the time June and July rolls around, that you'll see Montgomery ahead of these guys. How about that? Catch me outside.
Well, there is your first draft steal, which is the subject of this podcast. So that's what I like about doing these podcasts now. And people that do listen to this podcast now, it's funny. Like our podcast, the popularity of this podcast, sometimes like in these early best balls, like that's when the hardcore fans come in, because that's our first nugget. That's what we work on. That's what we work out on the air here. We work out. So you're identifying David Montgomery as an early best ball steal. I love that. I think that, that's not even somebody I was really thinking about as a steal. But if I can, that gives me an excuse to go get Justin Jefferson or AJ Brown or DK Metcalf in the second round, because now I know I have an upside RB1 that I can get early round 3. I love that, Geek. Let's keep moving on here, okay? So those were the main dilemmas. Now I'm going to move a little bit down with the running back position into two players who I think really increase their draft stock as viable players that I believe right now, if we did a best ball, will go in like the 5th round. And you're going to love talking about this one. I always like watching a reaction because so far you like the different matchups I've created here.
I do, and I love that you're not telling me what the ADPs are so that it doesn't spoil it for my brain space.
Right. I want this to be fresh. Okay, so Kareem Hunt versus Leonard Fournette is our next ADP dilemma. Okay, now now up until the Super Bowl, or the playoffs, I should say, Leonard Fournette, he was going in the same places as the veterans without a home next year, the James Connors, the Kenyon Drakes. But obviously what we did was we saw in the playoffs, and specifically in the Super Bowl, is Leonard Fournette earned himself a contract for next year. We don't know where it's going to be. Kareem Hunt, we know, is going to be paired with Nick Chubb. Parse out those two players. They're in very different situations with very different, what we know right now is very different about the two of them. You're going to be faced with picking one of them in the 5th round if you're going running back, Geek. Flesh it out for me.
So much speculation required here, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So,
but that's why people tune in. They want to know how to parse it out.
Well, this is a speculation situation. All right. So on the one hand, we've got a known role in Kareem Hunt. We know what he's going to do. And Kareem Hunt, pretty good. He's fine. It's a run-heavy team. Yes, he's the second guy, but for whatever reason, he's had a pretty strong red zone role. He does score a lot of touchdowns. And for all intents and purposes, when it comes to like DraftKings salary levels or DFS salary levels, for example, he's one of these guys that is not a sub 5K. He's not like a cheap guy on on the FanDuel system. He'd be around 6K. On DraftKings, he's in the fives. He's a nice piece that will contribute to your team. And on the flip side, we're going to roll the dice on Leonard Fournette. Where's he going to land? What team? Are they a starter? I'm going to take my chances here with Leonard Fournette. I think there's upside. I think there's legitimate upside coming off that Super Bowl, looking pretty good, but it is speculation. So we don't know where Fournette is going to land. He could be coming back to Tampa and no one else gives him a deal. He could go to a team.
Now he's earned some contract offers. So speculate on that right now, just based on what we know today. Do you think Tampa
might offer him that? See, how about what team might offer him a contract?
Well, that's what I'm asking. Let's name the three most, not the best, but like which three are the most viable? Who is going to? Because I think Leonard Fournette has earned himself either a overpay for a 1-year contract, or he's earned himself a multi-year market level deal. And I've identified 3 teams I think that are going to at least make the offer. And you tell me what you think here, okay?
Yeah, let me know which teams, because I'm rolling through a bunch of teams in my head, and I'm having a hard time even finding one.
Okay, so this is how I think it'll work. I think Arizona is no longer attached to Kenyon Drake, so they have money to. They have about $8 million they could spend on a running back. That's what they pay Drake. All right.
Okay.
So that's one idea. Obviously, the next one is take the hometown discount. He'd probably make a little bit less, probably like $4.5 million to stay in Tampa and go for another Super Bowl. Don't underestimate that. Staying with Tom Brady, Leonard Fournette finally found himself in the NFL. Okay, so it's go get the big bucks, stay home. Or there's a couple other teams that could be in it. Now, Chris Carson is looking. They haven't re-signed him yet. I could see Seattle saying, hey, they fired their offensive coordinator because they want to run more. They saw the Super Bowl. Maybe they're the team that goes in and says, hey, let's pay for a running back. Let's go in on Leonard Fournette. So those are the 3 teams that I've identified. Tampa, Seattle, which I think is a little less likely. I think they do like Carson. And I think Arizona is going to open up the wallet. And then, of course, Atlanta's a possibility, but I don't think that you're going to bring in a veteran there. I think they're going rebuild.
Atlanta seems like the most likely to me.
I know, but I could see them drafting one of these young running backs and going that route. So if you want to include them, that's fine. I originally had Leonard Fournette going to Atlanta, but I just don't think that he's going to go there. I think that he wants to go to a team that actually has upside. He's tasted champion. He's tasted that Super Bowl.
He wants to get paid, but I actually think he wants to get paid. He's a running back. Running backs rightfully should want to get paid above all. Winning. Okay.
So include them. So where do you think is the most likely of those teams?
I think the most likely is for him to stay in Tampa.
Right.
The Tampa, they're going to do it. They're going to go for it one more time. I don't see why they wouldn't try to keep the crew together. So I think he'll probably stay in Tampa most likely. And if he does, again, he'll still have the competition from Ronald Jones Jr. He's still not a wonderful play. I don't know if I think the best case scenario for fantasy purposes would be him landing in Seattle. If he goes to Seattle and gets a lead back role, if Carson's not there, then if they let Carson go, Carson very injury prone, not the guy they really need over there. I get they like him, but he can't stay healthy. So if he goes to Seattle, that value will spike. If he stays in Tampa, I would probably still favor him. But I can make a strong argument that I'd rather have Kareem Hunt as the backup running back with Cleveland than I would Fournette as sort of the 50-50 split guy in Tampa. So I can make a strong argument for Kareem Hunt in that scenario.
Yeah, and also
I don't love these guys.
Right.
I think if he goes to Atlanta, if he leaves, I like him more than staying in Atlanta. As odd as that sounds, I think the worst case scenario for fantasy value is him staying with Tampa.
Right, but I mean, this is the when you get to the 5th round, that's what happens. Yeah. These are the dilemmas you have to face. Obviously, the option.
Can I punt this and take Antonio Gibson at this point?
No, he's gone in the 3rd round, maybe even the 2nd. Yeah. So, but I'm saying these are the options become less appealing as you go down. So you have to kind of make the case. Now, we agree though that there's no better backup or 1B committee partner than Kareem Hunt, that if the starter goes down, that he's a top 12 RB automatically. So there's something to be said, but so is Fournette. If Ronald Jones was ever to miss some time, Fournette immediately becomes a top 12 option. Interesting there. Okay, so we've gone over the running back, the matchups, the early ADP dilemmas in Underdog Fantasy, which, by the way, if you should definitely download their app, check them out. We play best ball all off season, and these are if you've played the draft, Geek used to play the draft app, right?
Yeah,
remember them before they were bought by
these guys
FanDuel?
originated the best ball concept in the convenient format that we get it.
The creators of the draft app is Underdog Fantasy. And after they sold the company to FanDuel, they went and created another app that basically is the same thing. It's unbelievable. Okay, so on to draft steals. So here's a couple of I identified 2 players that I think are, just great steals. And you just tell me if you like these players. Then we can...
I want to know the names that I can pick up in rounds 8, in 10, and 12, that by the time August rolls around, and we're going to have to pay 5th and 4th and 6th round prices for them. Yeah. That's how you win your best ball league. So these are both very late in this draft that I can smash.
Yeah, you've heard me say this in our first podcast, but just hoping maybe that there's some new listeners that haven't gotten it yet. But there's 2 players that are running backs that are getting pushed into the 8th round or later that have a chance to be top 15 running backs, in my opinion. And that's Myles Gaskin and Damian Harris. Those 2 guys, there's definitely some concerns with them, but both of those players have top 15 RB. Walk me through each of those. Did any of those sound interesting to you? Can you get behind those at all as 8th round running backs with a chance to be every week starters?
I think Myles Gaskin deserves a discussion. So here's what we've got with Miami. First of all, it's interesting that Miami is quote unquote rumored to be needing a running back, to be quote, these are just speculations from people who have no idea what the hell they're talking about, in my opinion. But we can use that to our advantage. So the general sort of idea around the league is, Miami will be in the market for a running back because they have a Gaskin, and yeah, he looked great, but they're wrong. They're not going to be. I don't believe that Miami will be in the market for a running back. What I believe will happen is I think they liked Myles Gaskin. I think they like Salvin Ahmed behind him, and I think they think
Salah. That's the Salah is the name of the Jets head coach. It's Salvin Ahmed.
What is it?
Salvin.
Yeah, Salvin. Yeah, that's right. Salvin Ahmed. What? Come on, man.
All right. Salah is the Jets head coach.
You're right. Salah. I don't. It's too many. All right. Sal.
Yeah, Sal. Like Sal's Pizza.
Yeah, Sal. Hey, Sal. How you doing?
Hey, Sal.
All right.
Sal Ahmed.
All right. So Sal Ahmed, I think they like him behind Myles Gaskin. He looked good. So this is the mistake. We want to capitalize in early best ball leagues on mistakes. Now, the second part, I love this part. I'm passionate about this one. The second part, and this is my sort of overarching theme, one thing that I very strongly count on, young quarterbacks do not throw well in the red zone. So teams protect them by running the football on the goal line. What does this mean? On teams with a young quarterback, like a Tua, who can't, it's hard enough for them to read the field when they have a lot of space. When it's compacted into, 10 yards, 5 yards and out, it's even tougher for them. So the team tends to lean on the run. So you get, as long as the team's not a losing team, and the Dolphins are not, they're a great defensive team. They're going to win games just off of that. They will be in position to score touchdowns in the red zone, and you will have Myles Gaskin smashing in those touchdowns because they don't trust to throw. And so this is one of those incredible steals. I'm very comfortable with Myles Gaskin early in the 8th round as one of my counted on guys.
You might get him later than that.
What's that?
You might get him later than that, just so you know.
The later, the better, because you can count on this kid. Now, again, we want to use the perception that Miami is going to be drafting a running back, that they're going to try to replace this guy. He was an undrafted free agent. And it's true, he doesn't have draft capital, but he has played well capital. He played well.
Right. He's actually performed. He's actually done it on the field.
Performance capital is better than the draft capital. Okay. I don't think it's a fluke. I think they like the kid. I think he will be the starting running back next year. Listen, We don't know. Could they draft a guy in the first round? Of course. That would ruin everything. But I'm willing to speculate in the 8th and 9th round. And even if they do draft someone, who's the backup? Myles Gaskin. So, all right.
We have Salvin Ahmed, I mean, exactly. They're not gonna use that draft.
I would borderline take Gaskin. I would have to think about him even over the guys we talked about before. Certainly the Fournettes and the.
Well, that's what this podcast is about. It's about exploiting ADP. It's about ADP steals. Now, here's the good news for you.
Steal of the century. If you're telling me he's going 8th or 9th round or beyond, that is ridiculous.
Isn't that the whole point of this podcast, to do them in February, is to identify these players that we think that are going too late, they're going to move up. And right now, you said it perfectly well. There's that. Let's exploit perceptions. Let's exploit narratives. Now, again, that narrative could be true. If Miami hold on one second. If Miami drafts a running back, and I don't want you coming back and say, hey, you were wrong, ha, ha, ha. There's a chance we're wrong. There's a possibility we get it wrong. But let's make a bet in our big board contest on Underdog that if we're not, we're going to win it. It's not about finishing in the 50th percentile. We're trying to win the whole contest.
Let me give you a DFS version of that, because of course I exist in the world of DFS. For NBA last night or the other night, I'm going to give you a DFS example of this. Every now and again, you'll go into lock with a player questionable. We don't know if he's going to play. So it's like, what should I do here? The other, about a week ago or a few days ago, it was all of a sudden, Paul George, questionable tag late in the day, right? Now, we know in DFS NBA that when George is out, Kawhi Leonard all of a sudden spikes. Like, he has a great game. Like, you want to play him. It's the same thing with the Nets. When
one star's out, it's the same. And in football, it's like when Nick Chubb is out, Kareem Hunt, right?
Yes, it's one of those. Yeah. But you're going into lock and you don't know. So it's like, you know what? I'm just going to play Kawhi, and I'm going to roll the dice that George is actually out. We don't know for sure. Last night it was Draymond Green. I was like, I don't know. Draymond Green might be out, questionable tag late. If he's out, this guy Toscano, something or another, right, Anderson steps up. You're like, who the fuck is Toscano Anderson? Who cares? He's the guy who gets the points when Draymond Green is out. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going into lock. I'm just going to play the backup. And if I'm right, I'm going to try to win a tournament with this. Because other people aren't going to play this guy because they don't know in advance. Now, of course, people could late swap in and all of that. But the point is, it's when you take a little bit of a stand on something you think might happen. And then if you're right, try to win a tournament. It's the same idea in these best ball leagues. Like, you might say, well, what if they draft a running back? Well, if they draft a running back, by the way, is he guaranteed to start day one? I don't know about that. I see a lot of running backs drafted early and that don't start. So whatever, I'll take my chances. With
so I think right. You made an excellent point there, and I think that, like I said, that's a good. You know what? Here's the good news, Geek. Right? All this talk, and we only covered the running back. So the natural thing is we're going to come back next week, and we're going to cover the wide receivers. We're gonna put a stop to it right here. We've given you Geek's gone through his Barkley versus Jonathan Taylor. If you're just tuning in now, I want you to rewind it and listen. He's told you who to take, Zeke versus Austin Eckler in the late first round, early second round. Then we parsed out the 2019 rookies, the Sanders versus Jacobs versus David Montgomery. And then we talked about the mid rounds with the last of the strong running backs, Fournette versus Kareem Hunt.
Before we go, I want a dynasty question for you.
Sure.
And I want your opinion on this, because it's names of players that you mentioned. So in Dynasty, trade offered to you tomorrow, Miles Sanders, Cameron Akers. Who gets the nod?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, this is a great one. I probably would gamble on Akers at this point. I like the momentum that he's shown towards the end, and and Sean McVay made the gamble on him. Sometimes it's not so much what we think; it's what the team thinks. And I think we saw enough in that stretch run. We saw the ability. So I would go Akers, but I wouldn't fault anyone for going the other way. There's a case to be made for both.
Very close.
Yeah, but you agree though, Akers, right?
I would lean Akers from my recency bias tingles, which are so strong.
But sometimes recency bias actually does have teeth in it. So
the negative to Akers is they don't throw to him, and they did not start throwing to him late. But yeah, that could change.
Yep. All right, let's wrap here, and we'll come back next week with the wide receivers. Just give us the quick closeout, and we'll move.
So number one, if you're watching this, please like and subscribe to the channel. Reminder, as always, when you hit the like button, it gets our algorithm to pop this podcast up for other people, and people notice us, and maybe they hit like, and then all of a sudden,
But what's in? Why should someone? You know what? The reason that the viewer should hit it, because if you got some value out of this podcast, that's how you repay us. You repay us with a like, with a share. That's it. That's the transaction we're making with you, the viewer.
There we go. And of course, we are going strong at DFS Army. So, NASCAR started last night. I love NASCAR season. I'm from Brooklyn, by the way. I never watched a NASCAR race in my life, but for DFS purposes, it's up there. It's one of the most exciting sports. Like, it's almost every time I play a NASCAR contest, including last night, which was an awesome race, so much carnage, so much. Last night's race was nuts, by the way. If you watch it, let me tell you what happened last night in NASCAR real quick.
Okay, hurry up, though.
Chase Elliott's in the lead. Ryan Blaney's chasing him. I think it was Blaney chasing him, and they crash into each other. And Kyle Busch sneaks in and wins the turn. Wins the. I think it was. I can't remember who it was, but Chase crashes with the leader, and Kyle Busch on the last lap sneaks in for the win. It's a really fun. I'm in first place. I'm in last place. 2 seconds change everything. You're up $10,000 now. It's really fun. So get into DFS Army now. We've got a lot of sports going on. Of course, NBA, the start of NASCAR season, amazing. MMA going strong. So go to DFS Army, sign up as VIP. You can use promo code SAYS over there, get 10% off. VIP covers every sport. We are smashing this year like never before. And of course, go check out Underdog Fantasy. Play in the big board tournament at Underdog Fantasy. That's the contest that I'm going to be in. That's the contest that Says is in. It's $50K to first. Early best ball, $10 entries.
Use code DFSARMY when you sign up and you deposit.
By the way, put $100 in because they guarantee it. So you use code DFSARMY, put $100 in. You can get 10 best ball teams drafted for this tournament. If you don't have a good time, if you don't like the format, if you hate fantasy football and you realize that after a year, I treat them like a league. So some people are like, well, I don't like to do things for money online. It creeps me out. Whatever.
Who says that anymore? Everyone does it.
I don't know. Some people do. There's still that stigma. I say what I do. I just treat it like a fantasy league. Like, how you have 5 leagues or 3 leagues with your friends. You put a couple $100 in each league, and it gives you a season's worth of football watching enjoyment.
Yep.
Treat it like that. That's how I treat it. I'll do 10 drafts over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks. You can get in there. The drafts are really quick. So when you get in there, what happens is within 5 to 10 minutes, it's like, hey, your queue is filled. Your draft begins. And so that's it. You get it going. You do 10 drafts. Treat it like that. Give it a shot. And if you don't like it, email Underdog Fantasy. When you use the promo code DFSARMY, they add that guarantee in. Tell them, hey, I didn't enjoy your format. Or
There's no way. It's no way it's happening.
But if you have the chutzpah, then do that, and I guess you can get your money back. You got to wait a long time. Better wait until the season passes to do that. But
all right, man. So let's wrap here.
Check out DFS Army. We will be back with another bold call. Make sure to subscribe, like the channel, subscribe to the podcast, so you know when we're doing these. For myself, Kevin Allen, aka the Geek, and Season Long Says, aka Encyclopedia Footballica. See you next time.
Got the best coaches in the game. We really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches